record button.
I did. All right. Should be going now. Okay. All right. Welcome everybody to the Early Independence Award Q&A webinar. We're glad you could join us. Just as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so please keep that in mind as you uh, submit your questions and your responses. Although anything put in the Q&A box in the chat will be held privately, but we will do our best to answer anything you put in there. And I'm getting chats that people are having trouble hearing. So people who are attending, is anyone else having audio issues, or can anyone hear us? If you could just put in the chat. Oh, okay. Okay, good. You never know with WebEx. All right, I think we're good to start then. All right, so just some housekeeping. We ask that you please use the Q&A box to submit your questions for us. Your Q&A box, it's different from the chat box. If you go under the More button, the three little dots, you should be able to pull up a Q&A box. You can submit your questions through there. Please use the chat for things that you have issues like the audio issue. You can feel free to use the chat to tell us about those issues, but the Q&A box is where you're going to submit your questions. It just helps us to keep the questions in order and to delegate them out. We ask that you please keep your questions to general questions. Don't get them so specific that are very unique or specific to you, that are situational. Those are probably better answered through our mailbox and contacting us directly rather than through this forum. But if you do have more broad questions that could be more applicable to the audience, then please feel free to submit them. But if you do have additional questions that we aren't able to get to or don't adequately address for your needs, please email us at earlyindependence@od.nih.gov, and we will respond to your email. This webinar recording and the slides will be posted on our website at commonfund.nih.gov/earlyindependence. Give us a week or two to get them up, but they will be there you can view it, you can share it, and you can download the slides. But I also encourage you to go to our website. It's got a lot of fantastic information on there. We have things like frequently asked questions. We'll have this webinar. We also have an application and award guide that provides more step-by-step instructions on how to complete the application, as well as some example applications if you'd like to see what others have done. So please visit that. So I'm going to introduce our panelists. We have with us Dr. Trish Lebowski, who is the program leader for the High Risk, High Reward Research Program in the Office of the Director. We also have Dr. Suzanne Ryan from the Center for Scientific Review, and she is the Scientific Review Officer who oversees the Early Independence Award review. And I'm Becky Miller. I'm the Program Officer, and I oversee the Early Independence Award Initiative, and I am also in the Office of the Director. But to start us off, I'm going to ask Trish to give us a little bit more information and background about the Common Fund.
Hey, good afternoon or good morning, everybody. Yes, I'm Trish Lebowski. Nice to meet you all. I want to give you a little context about the Early Independence Award program and where it is with respect to the rest of the NIH. You know, there are 27 centers across the NIH, and we are in the Office of the Director. We're in this office that if you see down on the bottom left, the Office of Strategic Coordination, and we administer the Common Fund, which is, think about it as kind of a high risk, high reward venture capital space at the NIH. So this is a list of all of our programs at the moment. And I think if you look, you can see that we really encompass science from all over the place. And that's important for you all to think about, because likely your science is not the same as the science of the other EIA applicant next door. We take everything. So if you take a look around at this slide, you can see we have things about somatic cell genome editing, metabolomics, we have training awards, we have the four-dimensional nucleome. I mean, all over the place, right? So importantly, what this could provide for you, and this is a little bit of an advertisement, is a resource for you all. If you go to our website and look at this, next click, there's a lot of databases. There could be funding opportunities in specific areas, although they're not as common as we would like, but there's access to really incredible databases, reagents, protocols, high-end instrumentation like transformative cryo-electron microscopy. So it's just a resource for you and kind of a context to think about. Yes, we will take your applications, whether they're on neural development or T-cell activation. So we take all kinds of science. Importantly, today, what we're going to talk about is this high risk, high reward research program, which encompasses 4 awards bulleted out here. And on the next slide, these are the 4 awards: the Pioneer Award, New Innovator Award, Transformative R01, Transformative Research Award, and what we're going to hear about from Becky today, the Early Independence Award. Importantly, we support scientists at all career stages, but importantly, they all are proposing really amazing high-risk, high-impact research. We have funding opportunities for all 4 of these on pretty much an annual basis. And so if you don't apply this year, if you think you're not ready and you want to wait till next year, yeah, there will be another one. You have to wait for it to come out. But we do this almost every year unless something happens that I don't know about. So in the next, no matter what you need to propose is a really high risk, high impact idea. If it is the next obvious logical experiment that you would do based on your last paper or your last whatever, fellowship or something, that's probably not high risk and high impact. So you need to really think hard about that. We universally, for all 4 of these programs, we don't require any preliminary data. Okay, none, 0. Although I must confess it's rare that we don't see any in an application, but we don't require it. We also don't require a detailed experimental plan. However, reviewers must understand what you say you're going to do, what you will do, and they must understand that you've thought it through really clearly and you have a plan. So even if we don't want you to list out buffers and incubation times and things like that, but they need to know that you've thought about limitations of your approach, where things could go wrong and how you're going to get around them. So the next click, again, I mentioned already, any topic, any scientific topic relevant to the NIH mission is welcome. That includes all of these things listed here: behavioral, social sciences, biomedical research, any type, applied research, formal scientists, basic, translational, and of course, clinical research. So all of that is welcome in this program. We also encourage applications from PIs, from investigators with diverse backgrounds, and from the full spectrum of any eligible institution. So in the back of the funding opportunity announcement, the RFA, there is a list of what types of institutions are eligible. So look there and make sure yours is. Odds are it probably is, or you can always ask us, but we want everybody to apply. This is our Trans NIH High Risk, High Reward Working Group. So these are staff members. I'm not going to read all these names. This is a list of staff members from all across the NIH, and all of these little acronyms after their name indicate which institute or center they're focused at. So myself, Trish Lebowski, I'm at the OD, Office of the Director. So is Becky. And Suzanne, who's also here with us today, is from CSR, the Center for Scientific Review. So, but you see all these different acronyms that represent things like cancer, drug addiction, mental health, dental research, everything. And that really is important so that you know that there's a working group that eventually will be looking at all of the successful applications and will help administer awards. So I'm going to hand this over to Becky now, and she's going to tell you more about the Early Independence Award.
Right, thanks, Trish. Um, so the Early Independence Award is kind of a little bit different from those other three initiatives that were talked about briefly in the introduction with Trish, in that I view it as you yourself, as the candidate, are the risk. We're asking you to do something unusual, and that's to skip additional training to jumpstart your own independent research career. So this award, it's a bit different than the others in that we are asking you to, pursue very innovative and creative and significant research. But we also realize that you are building your research career. And so, we do understand that and understand that, you may be um, building your program off of skills and expertise that you were able to develop during your graduate training or your clinical training. Yeah, but this award began in 2011. It is called the Skip the Postdoc Award. We only allow single applications only because once again, it's for you to jumpstart your career. And because of that purpose of getting your career up and going, we do have a very strict eligibility window. So for this funding opportunity, you must have completed your terminal research degree or your clinical training sometime between June 1st of 2022 and September 30th of 2024. And those are very firm eligibility dates. So unfortunately, if you graduated May 30th of 2022, we can't make exceptions, and unfortunately, you would not be eligible. So you have to meet that window. I should say that your research degree, that date that's listed on your transcript, is the date that we will use to determine eligibility. And for clinical training, we don't disentangle training that might have included some research components to it. So if you're doing fellowships and such, um, we don't parse out the time you spent doing research versus clinical training. It's just when you complete that entire fellowship. We do have a stipulation, though, however, that you can't have had previous postdoctoral experience of more than 12 months after a previous doctoral degree. So that means that you got a PhD, you did a postdoc for, let's say, 13 months, and then you said, I want to do something different, and you went back to school and you got another PhD. You would no longer be eligible because you have more than 12 months of postdoctoral experience. However, if you only have the one doctoral degree, and then are in a postdoctoral fellowship and still meet this eligibility window, you're fine, you're eligible, even if by the time you submit the application or receive the award, you have had postdoctoral experience for more than 12 months. That's fine. We also require that you are in a non-independent position at the time of your application. We define non-independence functionally rather than by titles because titles can vary across institutions. So non-independence means that your research agenda is set through concurrence with mentors, so you don't control your own research agenda. Funding for your research primarily comes through others, such as your advisors, your mentors. You don't have dedicated laboratory space given to you by the institution, and you can't apply for an NIH R01 without a special waiver or some sort of special permission. So that's how we define non-independence. However, that being said, in order to apply, you have to have commitment or a promise from a host institution to provide you with an independent research position should you receive this award. So you need to have a position by September 30th of 2024. And we also limit each host institution to 2 applications per funding opportunity. And that's really to make sure that institutions think carefully and can provide the resources and the mentorship and just the attention needed for the candidates, since we are asking very junior scientists to do something that is typically not done. So we want to make sure your institutions really are supportive and paying attention to the candidates. We also require that you commit 9.6 months each year to the Early Independence Award research project for the first 2 years of the award. That's really meant to protect you so that you have enough time to focus on getting your program and getting your lab, getting personnel in. You have that attention to spend on getting your program going. After the second year, you can ramp down the effort on your Early Independence Award project. However, you must still commit at least 9.6 months each year towards independent research. So that could be you got another grant that you're working on. As long as it's independent research, it can count towards that 9.6 months. And this is so that you don't get pulled apart into doing too many different things, maybe teaching duties, administrative, clinical. We want you to be able to focus on getting your research program up and going. So these awards are $250,000 per year for 5 years. And because we want to make sure that you are doing all right and that the institution is providing the support needed for your success, we do have a site visit in the first year of the award. All right, so the Early Independence Award uses the DP5 mechanism. It's very different from the traditional R01 mechanism. And so this slide just breaks down some of the uniqueness of the DP5. So just to reiterate, there is that 2 application limit per institution. And your research strategy essay, while you get the full 12 pages, we do ask for a different focus in it. So we ask for you to look at, of course, the challenge, but we also want you to focus on your qualifications. You really need to make a case to the reviewers that you have the skills, expertise, and you are ready to take on an independent research program. We also ask you for your plans for your career development. What are you going to do? What is your research program going to look like? So you will also have to talk about that in your essay. And then, of course, we are interested in looking at what it is that you are proposing to do in your project. So why is it important? How is it innovative? Have you thought through potential roadblocks or pitfalls and how to overcome those? So, we ask for, we don't ask for like preliminary data or anything, but we do ask that it's a feasible project. You got to convince the reviewers that it's feasible and that you are the person that is equipped and ready to take on that challenge. Something that's also unique to our application is the facilities and other resources section. We ask for a very detailed, lots of detailed information in this section. What we want to know is how the institution is going to support you as the candidate. What we don't want to see is a lot of generic language, like this institution was founded in blah, blah, blah. That's great now, but what we want to know is how is the institution going to address your needs, support you? What are the specifics of how they're going to make sure that you succeed? What type of mentorship or resources do they have at their disposal to make sure that you succeed? For the DP5, it's $250,000 a year, so that's a modular budget. And we do encourage you to submit letters of collaboration, or also called letters of support. So those are going to be from your collaborators or other people who will be able to provide expertise, perhaps equipment, things needed to support your project. For the biosketch, only you, the PIs, is allowed. We don't allow you to include biosketches from collaborators or contractors or anyone else, only your biosketch. And don't try to sneak your biosketch into other parts of the application. That's a no-no. It's only the PI's biosketch in the application. We talked about the research effort, so 9.6 months for the first 2 years. And for this application, we also require that you submit 3 to 5 letters of reference. And those letters are required, at least 3 are required. If you don't have letters of reference, then your application is considered incomplete and will not be reviewed. All right. So something that's new this year is that we are asking you to designate scientific areas. So what we want you to do is to think about your research area and try to bin them as best you can into one of these 9 scientific areas. We ask you to designate at least one, a primary science area. However, you are welcome to also designate a second scientific area if it's applicable. We ask you to indicate your selection on the SF424 cover form. You're going to list it in the agency routing identifier box. And just as a heads up, the funding opportunity that is currently out there has the instructions for the wrong form. So we're currently in the process of issuing a notice to correct that so that the instructions are under the correct SF424 cover form instruction box. So just as a heads up. All right, and I talked a bit about this before, but delve more into the facilities and other resources section. This should be put together by you and your institution, and it's a really important section, and it should not be overlooked, and it definitely should not just be composed of boilerplate language. We really want this tailored to you and specific to your circumstances and your needs. And it's really important that as you are talking about the facilities and all the resources available to you, that you also provide context to the reviewers. So Suzanne will talk a bit more about the review process later, but the reviewers are not necessarily going to be topic experts in your field, and they may not be aware of special considerations for your field. Because of that, it's important for you to really explain how the resources are adequate, or perhaps they're even above board. They're incredibly supportive, but you need to spell that out for reviewers because they may not know. So please provide context in this section. We also want you to answer questions in these different headings, such as what was the candidate selection process? So to discuss what the process was and the criteria used to select you as the candidate. We want to know information about the position, so provide details on what that position is and a description of it. We also want to see what the institutional resources are and make sure that they are committed to you. So this can include things like your lab space, it could be supplies, equipment, it could be access to equipment, be staff, additional funds, anything that is going to help you to get your research program up and going and support you, can be added into this section. And then we also want to hear about your institutional career development plans. So how are you going to ensure independence? What type of mentorship is available to you? How will you be brought into the rest of the research community at that institution? And those types of things we'd also want you to list out here. All right. For your specific aims page, this is a really important section where you're going to distill the entire proposal into one page. What we want is just an overview of, number one, what is it you're trying to achieve? So what are your research objectives? We want you to briefly describe the project and your approach. But we also want to hear about your institutional support. So how are you going to be supported? What resources are available to you, and how will this help you accomplish your research objectives? And then we also want to know why you think you're ready for independence. What's your rationale? What are your qualifications, your experience, skills? What have you done that lets the reviewers know that you are ready to take on that independent research role? So make sure that you have a clear argument in mind about how you will be able to accomplish what it is that you are stating in your application. All right, and a little more information now about the research strategy essay. This is that 12-page essay. We want to know things such as why you're skipping the postdoc, why you're omitting it. We want to know how you'll be transitioning to independence. So what's your evidence of being ready for that independent position? What's your career development plan? Um, have you demonstrated leadership in the past? What are what will your interactions be with the host institution? And then, of course, we want to know about what it is you're proposing to do. What's your research challenge? What's your approach to it? How is it innovative? How does this relate to previous work you've done? And then a timeline on when you will accomplish all of those tasks. So some things for you to consider. Um, just as you put together your application, it's helpful to take the viewpoint of a reviewer. You want to make sure that you can convince the reviewers that you are ready for independence, and that you have all of the resources and all the support that you need to succeed. And then you also want to let them know why your research topic is significant, how it's innovative, and why the approach that you're taking is the right one, and that you've thought carefully through it, and that you can overcome any potential roadblocks or hurdles that you may face. So take that viewpoint, and if you can address those issues, I think you're significantly closer to the goal of being funded. You want to make sure that reviewers are confident that you are ready and prepared to begin your independent research career. And as I mentioned before, since reviewers may not be topic experts in your particular science field, make sure that you write your application in a way that can be easily appreciated by those who are outside your field. So be careful and avoid jargon. And once again, I want to reiterate, provide context for the reviewers. You don't want them making up scenarios or trying to guess why something is put together a certain way. You just want to go ahead and tell them why what you're proposing is adequate. And no preliminary data are required, but you still need to be able to convince reviewers that you've thought very deeply about your project. You've thought through what the risks may be, how you'll mitigate them, and what alternative approaches you might take should things go sideways. You also want to convince reviewers that the research will be performed robustly and in a rigorous manner. And if you're bringing in new approaches, you want to make sure that they're validated. You need to address things such as, um, you know, how many animals you need, estimates of human subjects, those types of things, as well as consider sex as a biological variable if it's appropriate. And another new thing this year. This is new for all of NIH, so we'll be learning all together. But now data management and sharing plans are required for all applications. So these plans are meant to explain how scientific data that are generated by your project will be managed and what type of data will be shared. So this is going to go as an attachment in the others plans section of the PHS 398 research plan form. These plans should not be longer than 2 pages in length, and they need to include elements such as the data type, the tools, software, code used, what are the standards, how will you preserve the data, how it will be accessed, and when will it be available, so timelines. We want to talk about how it will be distributed or how it could be reused, and oversight of managing and sharing the data. You will need to request and justify costs as an additional narrative justification in the modular budget form. So you need to think through what really will it cost for me to manage and share these data, and then think about how much that would cost and put that into the budget form. So the budget will be considered by reviewers, but the plan will be reviewed by NIH staff. And if we feel like there are some adjustments that are needed, we can go through the just-in-time process to make those adjustments. But it's important to note that these data management and sharing plans are not score drivers. but these should be still completed in a robust manner. And it's important to note that these become part of the terms and conditions of your award, and they'll be part of your notice of award. So you will be expected to follow through with these plans. So for more information, I will direct you to the NIH site, sharing.nih.gov. They have a lot more information, and they have some examples on how to put together these plans. They're not templates, but they have some examples of some elements to consider as you're putting these together. And this is new for all of us, so we will muddle through it as best we can. So now I'd like to turn this over to Suzanne, who will talk to you about the review process.
Thanks, Becky. So my role as the scientific review officer is to oversee the entire review process that runs from the time you submit your application until the time that the summary statements are released. So if you can go to the next slide, please, briefly touch on an overview of the review stages. So the applications are due by September 6th. You should therefore, in your mind, plan to submit before September 6th. Give yourself some time for things to go wrong because there is not an option to fix things after that deadline. So we always advise submit 2 to 3 days in advance of the deadline so you have time to fix any errors that may pop up. And then the first stage of review will happen from October through December, in which your applications will be reviewed by subject matter experts. I'll go into more detail later. And then it moves on to the editorial board for the second stage of review. They will have your applications in January and February. And then the meeting of the editorial board will take place in March of 2024, where the top 50% of applications will be discussed and final scores will be provided by that editorial board. And then all of that, their scores, the summaries, the critiques that they write, a summary of the discussion that happened at the meeting goes to the NIH Council of Councils in May, and that's when the funding decisions begin to be made, and that continues through the next summer. In terms of what we tell reviewers, just general review considerations that we advise reviewers on. It's helpful for you to know what we tell reviewers so that you can have that in mind as you're preparing your application. So in general, we remind the reviewers that the PIs for the DP5 awards are at a very early stage of their career, their research career, and that substantial preliminary data are not required. We emphasize that so that you are not unfairly held to a standard of having them expect preliminary data. And we tell them that the award is expected to enable the PIs to start a productive and independent research career that will have a significant impact on the field. So the emphasis is on your readiness, the promise of the investigator, to be productive and independent at a quite early stage. So in order to assess the promise of the investigator, reviewers are directed to look carefully at the biosketch and at the letters of reference that are submitted on your behalf, as these become critical areas where information is provided about what you've done in the past, why you have both tangible and intangible skills that make you ready to be an independent investigator at this point. They're also directed to pay a lot of attention to the institutional support and commitment. As Becky has already talked about, that facilities and other resources section is expected to be much more detailed than in typical NIH applications. And the information in there is scrutinized very carefully by the reviewers, because we really do need to make sure that you are sufficiently supported by the host institution to make sure that you're going to be successful if you are awarded this early independence award. The letters of support also can provide that information about whether it's a letter of commitment from your institution that outlines what resources they are going to provide you. Maybe the chair of the department might write a letter, but also any collaborators that you may need to support you in the scientific part of your project. Because as Becky said, there can only be one PI and no co-investigators listed under key personnel. Only the PI can submit the biosketch. So any additional folks that you need to support you in terms of adding scientific expertise or technical expertise, they can provide letters of support and outline their roles in those letters. And then, of course, the reviewers are told that you are expected to provide an application and a proposed project that will be both significant and innovative and have a robust and rigorous approach. So those are the general overview thoughts for the reviewers. Okay, next slide. All of the reviewers are going to be asked to give an overall impact score for your application using the standard NIH scoring scale of 1 to 9, where 1 is the best score, 9 is the worst score. And then the stage 1 reviewers will also give individual criteria scores for the 5 review criteria: significance, investigator, innovation, approach, and environment. And investigator and environment are highlighted here because the funding opportunity, the RFA specifically says that reviewers are to give more weight to the investigator and environment criteria in evaluating the overall impact of the application. And that's a bit different than your standard R1, where reviewers are told to weight the components as they see fit. Here, because this is an application that is about you, the investigator and the environment criteria are given more weight by the reviewers. So to talk a little bit more in depth about each of the review stages, the stage 1 review, this is where the subject matter experts are evaluating your application. All the applications are reviewed in one panel. So unlike an unsolicited R1, where the applications are assigned to study sections of best scientific fit, all of the early independence awards are reviewed in one special emphasis panel. And what that means is that the panel will not necessarily have expertise to cover all of the scientific areas that we may receive in the applications. Because as Trish said, we're open to every area of science that is relevant to the NIH mission. And so because one panel cannot have all the expected and necessary scientific expertise, we do this in 2 stages. And in stage 1, each application is assigned to 3 specific subject matter experts. And in order for that, to make sure that we get the appropriate scientific or subject matter experts, all of the review branches at CSR will be involved in assigning expert reviewers to your applications. So when your applications come in, we decide which branches within the Center for Scientific Review have the right scientific expertise. So if it's an epidemiology of cancer application, for example, we will send it to our epidemiology and population health group, and they will recruit 3 expert reviewers for your application. If it's a cell biology application, it will go to that review branch, and they will recruit the 3 expert reviewers for your application. So you will each have 3 very spot-on experts for your application. They will be asked to provide a full written critique and scores, the overall impact score and the 5 criteria scores. And their focus is almost solely on the science. Is this important? Is it innovative? And is the approach conceptualized and operationalized appropriately? Once the stage 1 review is complete, then it moves on to the editorial board. So the editorial board is a panel composed of very senior scientists in the field who have broad expertise. So they are not chosen because they have specific expertise in your particular application. They are chosen because they have shown themselves to be able to be broad thinkers who can appreciate science across different domains and who can evaluate contributions to the field in a much broader way. And the scientific areas that you will identify when you submit your application that Becky talked about as being new this year, those will be used in helping to make sure that the assigned editors have the broad expertise that are needed for your project, whether that's social behavioral science expertise or one of the other topics may be translational expertise or whatever it may be. Each of these editors is assigned typically about 12 to 15 applications after the stage 1 review is completed. They're going to read your application as well as the 3 critiques from the stage 1 reviewers. And they will use their own personal judgment as well as rely on those stage 1 critiques to help them assess the scientific components of your application. And they'll assign just an overall impact score to the application, and they don't write anything. So any written critiques you see will be from the subject matter experts. You will not see anything written from the editors. Instead, their scores are used to inform what are the top 50% of the applications. So we average the assigned editors' overall impact scores, and based on the average of those scores, we We prioritize the applications based on top to bottom average score and cut it off at the top 50%. Those are the ones that move on to being discussed by the editorial board at the meeting next March. And in that meeting, each of the 3 assigned reviewers will give their presentation about what are the goals of your project and what do they see as the key strengths and weaknesses across the project. And again, they're focusing primarily on the investigator and the environment are the top 2 considerations, and then of course the merits of the science that's proposed as well. And it is those, after we have the discussion, then every member of the editorial board is asked to vote on a score. Those scores are guided by the 3 assigned editors, but they're welcome to use any scoring point, and the average of all of the editorial board scores are what represent the final score for your application. So we asked the editorial board to consider whether the PI is an exceptional individual. Right? It's not everybody who's ready to launch an independent career shortly after completing their graduate or clinical training. So they are looking for exceptional individuals who have demonstrated they have scientific creativity, intellectual sophistication, and a readiness now to launch a vigorous and independent research program at this early stage. They're also asked to think seriously about whether the host institution has demonstrated that they are fully committed to supporting the PI, to providing them with scientific freedom, that you'll have the ample resources that you need, collaborating faculty, protected time, and any other, again, tangible or intangible resources that are needed, the mentoring necessary, that integration into the environment fully that will help you be successful in launching an independent career. And then all of that wrapped in with the science for them to, their primary job in the end, to identify the top outstanding applicants who have the best research prospects and the best potential that will have the best potential for a sustained impact on the field. Okay, so then in terms of logistics, after the review panel meets, within 3 to 5 business days, your scores will be posted in Commons. If your application was discussed, you will see a final score listed. It will range from 10, which is the very best score possible, to 90, which would be the lowest score possible. If your application was not discussed, so if it didn't fall into that top 50%, you won't see a score listed, and instead it will say not discussed. Within 30 days, then all of the applicants, whether it was discussed or not, all the applications receive a summary statement. The applications that were discussed, the only thing that's different is that in addition to seeing the 3 sets of critiques from the stage 1 reviewers, the discussed applications will also have what we call a resume, which is a summary of the discussion that happened. And it will really give you a sense of what were the main topics of discussion, were there areas of disagreement, if so, did the majority of the panel vote one way and the minority vote the other way? It's to help you, since you can't be in the room, to get a sense of what the discussion tone was and outcome. And the not discussed applications get the 3 written critiques from the stage 1 reviewers. And in terms of tips beyond what Becky has already said, she has already specified that you do need to be really specific about the institutional support. Provide very clear evidence that the position and the resources are sufficient for your project. The letters of reference should not sound generic, so make sure you advise your letter writers to comment on what makes you unique, what makes you ready at this point to take on an independent project. You also need to speak very clearly about how your research will advance science more broadly. What is the significance of your project? Keep in mind that the editorial board is going to be composed of scientists who may not understand your field at all. So you need to be able to clearly articulate the significance of your science in a way that a broad general audience of scientists may be able to appreciate. And then something that comes up often is that PIs generally, sometimes early in their career, take on more than is reasonable. So make sure that you set reasonable specific aims that can be accomplished within the project timeline and the resources that are available. And instead of trying to outline everything you hope to do in your career, bite off a manageable chunk and then discuss what long-term goals or next steps may be. There's resources here for you and my contact information as well. I'm happy to answer questions that we may not have time to answer here.
All right, thank you. All right, so we are going to move now into the Q&A portion of this. I've broken up the questions that we received earlier into some broad topic areas, but we will also be looking at that Q&A box if you have anything else that you would like to add to the discussion. Once again, if you have specific questions that are very specific to your circumstance or asking about scientific inquiries, we ask that you please email our Early Independence Award at od.nih.gov mailbox, and we can answer those directly. All right, but I do have a list of the questions that were submitted earlier, and we're
So
going.
Becky, do you want me to read these off?
Do you have them?
Yeah.
Oh, sure, that
Yeah,
works.
okay, so I think this first one is for you. How can I find an institution that's willing to support me?
All right. Well, NIH does not match you with potential host institutions. So you will need to reach out and approach institutions that have this, that you would have your research that you would fit into their program there, and ask them to be a host institution. But remember that because we have that 2 application limit per institution, that the sooner you contact them, the better, because they may have internal processes and timelines that you need to meet in order to be one of those 2 candidates.
Who would you say that I should contact at my institution to see if they're willing to support me?
Yes, so that can depend quite a bit on the institution itself. But sometimes that would be like a department chair or a dean. It's whoever has the ability to create or fill positions. You will want to reach out to them. But usually it's within a department or kind of division or college that's going to be of relevance to your research interests. Start there and talk with them to see who would be the appropriate person to speak with.
So along that vein, someone asked, do I submit from my current institution where I'm getting my degree, or do I submit it from the institution where I'm going to do the research?
Yes, we get this question a lot. It's important that you submit your application from the institution where you will be conducting the research. So the reviewers and NIH, we need to know what the resources and the support is like at the place you will actually be. So you will need to contact your future host institution and work with them on putting together the application components, as well as ensuring that they are committed to you and will provide you with that independent research position should you be awarded.
Can you talk a little bit about the experience of successful applicants in selecting an institution? Do you have any recommendations in terms of when to start reaching out to those institutions and what information to give them about this award program?
Yeah, so it varies quite a bit. Of course, the sooner the better you reach out to potential host institutions, since once again, we have that limit, that 2 application limit. So you'll probably need to meet some of their internal selection deadlines. I'd say that most applicants usually I have either responded to job announcements that are out there for independent research positions, or a lot of them actually still stay at the institution where they conducted their training, their doctoral work. A lot of it's because the people know them, and if that institution's really committed to them, they may want to keep them. There are some potential downsides to applying from your institution that you did your training at, because we want to ensure that you will be fully independent and are not relying on previous mentors or advisors to direct your research. But I do say we have a lot of people who do tend to stay at the same institution where they had their training done as well. A lot of people also will apply for independent research fellowships. There's those across the country. Those might be programs that you could also reach out to and figure out their application and selection process.
So here's kind of a question in the same vein from someone. I haven't found a host institution yet. Can I submit my application and continue to search for one while the application is being reviewed? So in other words, can a candidate be supported by their current institution, I guess, where they got their degree, through a temporary non-tenure track appointment with the understanding that the person will depart the institution to start that tenure track position elsewhere?
Yikes. Yeah, unfortunately, no. You need to apply from the place where you will be able to conduct the research. So part of the requirements, eligibility requirements, is that you have a commitment from an institution that they will put you in that independent research position by September of 2024. So that is a requirement. So you can't be in some sort of temporary state hoping that you'll find a place to land should you be awarded this. Another important thing to remember is that the NIH funds institutions, not people. So the application is actually coming from an institution. So you have to find an institution who will submit the application on your behalf. And in their submission, that means that they are committed to whatever is in that application. And same with the award. If you are awarded, that award and the money actually goes to the institution, not to you directly. So keep that in mind, that you have to have an institution to do things on your behalf. So you need to find the place that will actually provide you with that independent research position before you can apply.
Okay, there's a couple people asking a similar question, but the question is, what level of commitment is expected from that host institution? So is it okay if it's an offer of employment that's contingent upon receipt of the award, and would that be viewed negatively? What about an offer of an employment for a non-tenure track? Is that a sufficiently strong commitment?
Yeah, so we don't specify the commitment level or the title or type of position offered, except that it needs to be an independent research position. So depending on the field, the needs for your research and for setting up your program might be different, but the institution must commit at least the resources and the support needed for you to be able to conduct that research successfully. In terms of things being contingent or if it's tenure track or non-tenure track, those things, we instruct the reviewers not to weigh that contingency in the review process. However, at times you just want to make sure that the reviewers still feel that even if something is contingent upon receipt of the award, that the support is there, the institution is committed to you and excited for you. And I might actually ask Suzanne to chime in about that as well.
Yeah, thanks. We definitely emphasize to the reviewers that it is okay if an application says that a position is contingent upon the award. The reviewers really are asked to evaluate the scientific environment that the institution will provide and the facilities and the resources, and to trust that if they say that they are committed to giving you a position, if a DP5 were to be awarded, that they mean that. And so as long as all the resources are there for you to be successful, it is fine if an expected position is contingent upon award.
So does that institution have to commit a startup package if the award is received?
Suzanne, do you want to take that?
The reviewers are looking for clear commitment from the institution, and one way that they can demonstrate that commitment is to provide some startup funds. So there's not a certain expectation of amount. It's possible that it could be viewed as supportive without some startup funds if you can demonstrate how you will have sufficient financial support and facility support that is needed. But it is often viewed as a way that for the reviewers to say this institution is committed to this person, and they're going to demonstrate that with some funds to make sure that you have what you need. But again, it's not a requirement, and there's no one amount. We tell the reviewers that different areas of science have different requirements and different, they just have different levels of resources that are needed to carry out a project. And so they need to evaluate the resources in relation to the project that's proposed.
Okay. So for applicants that are currently grad students and they're applying from that current institution, is it okay to continue with their current mentoring team, for example, their PhD advisor, or would it be recommended that they find new mentors?
Yeah, for that, it would be recommended that you have a mentoring team that is probably separate from your previous advisors. This is one thing you want to make sure is that the reviewers are convinced that you are ready for independence, and if they see a lot of the same names popping up in your application mentoring team that were also present for your training, they may view that as kind of a crutch, or you are still relying on those people in order to conduct research or come up with ideas, and they may not view that favorably. So I would think carefully about who you include in that team.
So, along those lines, is it important to mention a strong mentorship team on the application?
Yes, and there is a component in the application where we directly kind of ask about what type of mentoring you will receive. So definitely you need to think about that, about how you want that structured and how the institution will support you.
Okay. Is an application less likely to be supported or funded if the applicant proposes to stay at that same home institution? And is it the case even if the research is sufficiently distinct from their previous mentor and involves plans for mentorship or collaboration with other PIs who were not their previous mentor? So is continued mentorship from their original mentor discouraged, all other things equal? Sorry, there's a bunch of questions there.
Yeah, so if you stay at the same institution, um, I think it just takes some special considerations when you're putting together the application package. So once again, you want to make sure that the reviewers are convinced of your readiness for independence, that you will be independent should you receive the award. And so that may involve just talking about a lot about how you will be separated from those previous advisors and mentors from your training program. Uh, I've heard like even if you are saying I'm going to be in a different department, same institution, maybe a different department, that could help show separation, or even things like physical distance. So we're going to be in different buildings or different floors, like anything that you can do to kind of emphasize and showcase that you are separate from those previous advisors and that you can stand on your own 2 feet would be good. And in the same vein as what we answered earlier, we would encourage you probably to come up with a new mentoring team and not rely on those people that you previously who previously advised you during your training period. Because once again, make sure that you're coming off as independent and ready to be on your own.
So is that mentorship team, is it required that they be from the same home institution, or maybe it would be better to have mentors across at a different institution?
Yeah, so it can be done many ways. I've seen some mentoring committees that are all composed of people within their department. I've seen others that are within a school, some that are within an institution, and I've seen others that actually require that have actually reached out to external institutions for mentorship. I think it depends on your research and really where are the maybe some of the expertise or some of the input that you need. And if some of those experts are outside your institution, it's fine to bring those people in. Perhaps they're all closer to you in your department. that's fine as well. Once again, though, you just want to make sure that the people you're selecting, that that you can assure reviewers that you're independent from them, and that while they fill some needed knowledge areas that you may require, that you're not leaning on them too much heavily as a crutch for your own independent research.
Okay. I'm seeing a lot of sort of duplicate questions here, and I don't want to spend it all on institutions. Should we move forward and then come back if we have time?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Okay. I just feel like there's a lot. The next category is on eligibility, right? Maybe? Can you move the slides? I can't.
Oh yeah. So, okay.
Yes, it is. Okay. So the first question, I think is very important, right? Is the June 1, 2022 to September 30th, 2024 eligibility window firm? I graduated May 31st, 2022. It's only a day out of the eligibility window. Can I be exempted?
No, unfortunately, we cannot make exceptions. That window is firm, so you need to fit within those dates. And I saw another question in the Q&A box about if you will be graduating with your degree after you submit the application. That's fine. Once again, that window is to September 30th of 2024. But if you are going to graduate or finish your clinical training after the application is submitted, we do ask that you include in there just a commitment and affirmation from an institutional official that you will meet those requirements and be able to graduate or complete things on time.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about who is this authorized official? Is that just my chair or, my previous mentor? Who's authorized? What does that mean?
Yeah, we don't specify the person that would write that, but it needs to be somebody who is familiar with it. I think probably somebody, a department chair, would be sufficient. If you are in your graduate program for clinical training, it may be someone different. But talk with your institution about that. The NIH just needs affirmation that you will be able to complete things on time.
Okay. So when is the latest time? So these grants would be made in 2024, sometime around August or so, but what's the latest time that they might be started? Can it be delayed just in case, like, I'm not getting my tenure track appointment until November 2024? Can it be delayed until the start of that appointment?
Yeah, no, we part of the eligibility requirement is that you will be in your independent research position by the time the award is made.
Okay.
So September of 2024 is when you would need to have your position stated for you. That being said, I know sometimes if you're waiting for that tenure track position, but you're still in an independent research position before then, that's fine. We can make the award. You have your independent position. You can start your project. But then the institution maybe a few months later, 6 months later, might move you into that tenure track position. That's better. That's fine. But you just have to be in an independent research position at the time the award is made so you can begin conducting the research. And we can't delay things, like even give you a later budget or anything, because we have to expend all of our funds by the end of our fiscal year, which happens to be the end of September. And so if you don't have your position ready before that end date, then we can't give you the funds because they will be gone. They go back to the Treasury. So you need to make sure you have your position ready by September 2024.
Thanks. Back to that window of eligibility dates. When is the cutoff date for having greater than 12 months in the postdoc? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so that postdoc limit of 12 months only applies to non-terminal degrees. So if you're in a postdoc position and you finished your terminal research degree, but within that window, you're fine. It only applies to getting a PhD, serving a postdoc for over 12 months, then going and getting another degree. Then you wouldn't be eligible. However, if you only have one degree and that fits within that eligibility window, that postdoc limit doesn't apply to you.
Okay. So if I fit in the eligibility requirements to apply twice, can I respond to the reviewer comments and resubmit the application next time?
So yes and no. So we do not accept resubmissions. So those are your A1 type resubmissions. However, if you still meet the eligibility requirements in the next funding opportunity, you are welcome to apply again. But when you submit your application, it will have to be a new application, even if it's got all the same proposal, all the same information. We just don't accept resubmissions.
Okay. Would an MD PhD candidate completing their medical residency be a reasonable candidate for this award, or can you give some idea of who the typical successful candidates are for this award in terms of career path or stage?
Yeah, so we have actually seen a lot of MDs or MD PhDs apply lately. So they're definitely competitive. We've seen candidates from all over the board, from people who have just gotten their PhD to people who have been working hard in clinical training for years and years and years. So I don't know if there's really an ideal candidate except for one who really can demonstrate and convince reviewers that they are ready for independence and they have a research career in mind and have direction and the skills and expertise to execute it and the support to do it.
Okay, if some of your research time is during residency, does that count toward the 12-month postdoc research experience limit? Or does that 12-month research experience only start counting after the residency ends?
Yes, we don't disentangle research experience mixed in with clinical training. I know that's really complicated to do. So research experience while you're also doing your clinical training does not count as postdoctoral experience. So
Okay.
that rule that's not a postdoc in our eyes, so that rule does not apply to you.
Okay, good. How much expertise is needed in the proposal's research area? So if I have expertise in certain methodologies and I want to apply or utilize it in a field where I don't have robust expertise, is that okay?
You would need to be careful because once again, we need to make sure that you are ready for independence, and you would need to be able to demonstrate to the reviewers that you do have the skills and knowledge and everything needed to conduct the research. Now, for your project, you are welcome to have collaborators and contractors assist you with the project, but you can't be relying on them so heavily that it looks like they're actually managing the project or that they're performing the meat of it. So you need to think about it carefully if you are switching research directions and may not have the proper expertise in an area that you might want to think harder about how you might want to structure your proposal so that it demonstrates what you are capable of.
Okay.
If I can just jump in, sometimes when that
Please.
comes up in review, sometimes the reviewers will say that what it really demonstrates to them is that you actually need a postdoc, that you're not ready to skip a postdoc, and that perhaps you have the technical skills, maybe some sophisticated laboratory expertise, but you don't have the biology expertise needed to apply those methodologies. They may say, if it's not clear in the application that you have that biology expertise, for example, they may say this really is a candidate who is outstanding, but really needs a postdoc to gain that other area of science.
Okay, here's another one in the Q&A box. I graduated in May 2023 and secured non-tenure track faculty position, assistant professor. I haven't received any NIH funding. Am I eligible to be considered as an early independent for this award? Sorry. So graduated PhD May 2023. They have a non-tenure track faculty position, assistant professor, but non-tenure track. No NIH funding yet. Are they eligible for this?
So we look at the position functionally. So that's where you would need to be in a non-independent research position to apply, meaning you don't set your own research agenda, you don't get your own funding, you don't have lab space dedicated for your research, and that you can apply for an NIH R01 without special permissions. So if your position fits those requirements, then you would be eligible. However, it sounds like if you're an assistant professor, even if it's not tenure track, usually those positions are independent positions. But you can email me offline, and we can delve into that further.
Yeah, and the other thing to think about is that if that is you, we do have we have another program that might be relevant. That's the DP2 or the New Innovator Award. So you can look at that as well. Becky, can you say a little bit more about what is a non-independent research position? How is that defined?
Yeah, so that's defined functionally. So that's where you have those 4 characteristics of not having your having your research agenda set through concurrence with mentors, having funding for your research coming primarily through others like those mentors, not having dedicated laboratory space for your research, and then needing special permission from the institution to apply for an NIH R01.
Okay. How much time needs to be dedicated to the award project?
Yes, so we require 9.6 months of effort dedicated to the Early Independence Award project for the first 2 years. That those are actual person months. It's not like a percentage of effort. It's 9.6 months must be focused on the DP5. However, after the first 2 years, you can drop your effort down on the DP5 project, but you must still commit at least 9.6 months of effort towards independent research in general. So if you get other projects or have other grants and awards, you can focus some effort on those and drop your effort on the DP5, but you still have to have that 9.6 months throughout the full year.
Okay, so there's a similar question, but I don't know if we can answer this without more detail. A person asks, I have a question about the 9.6 months. She says, or she or he, they say, I'll be starting a position as a tenure track assistant professor at an R1 institution. That sounds like an independent research position. I will have a teaching load of 4 classes per year with a couple teaching releases in the beginning. Is it okay for this award to have some level of teaching commitments, or do you think a successful applicant would need to show they have no other commitments if they're awarded this? How should this be phrased in the application?
Yeah, we just specify 9.6 months. Whatever you're doing to fill the rest of the year is between you and the institution. So if that time is spent teaching, and I don't know how many hours the teaching load of 4 classes would be, but you would just need to make sure that you can dedicate those 9.6 months to your research project. So that really is, we don't specify otherwise. I mean, usually you're not going to have 0 commitments for anything else. We just want to make sure that you do have enough effort to really get your program up and going.
Okay. Can I apply for the award before I finish my PhD? My likely PhD award date is after the September application deadline.
Yes, as long as you meet the eligibility window.
Okay. Oh, this is an important one. does the Early Independence Award, if I get the award, remove my ESI or early stage investigator status?
Oh, yes, it does. So if you get it, you would no longer have that ESI status.
Okay. My area of science has not been funded in the program before. Should I still apply? It doesn't sound like you're interested in my area of science.
Um, we welcome all areas of science. So, and we encourage diverse areas. And we're always trying to expand our portfolio of supported topics. So, yeah, we welcome applications, and we do have programmatic discretion in looking at some of those areas that we may not have funded before. So please apply.
Back to the percent effort requirements. This is, I guess, a surgeon scientist writing. How should we address the percent effort requirement if they're a surgeon scientist? And they have a two-part question. Is the award transferable between institutions if we're currently interviewing for new faculty positions?
Yeah, so that is that effort will be something you need to discuss with your institution. We do require that 9.6 months, and so if you were to receive the award, you would be expected to abide by those terms. So it's up to you and your institution to work out how that will be possible. I know that's very difficult for a lot of clinician scientists, so it will take some negotiation. Um, what was the second part, Trish?
Oh, is it transferable
Oh.
if I'm currently interviewing for faculty positions, or really at any time? Is this transferable, this award?
Yes, yeah, you can transfer the DP5 award, just like any NIH grant. So based on NIH policy. Remember though that the institutions are the ones that hold the award, so you would have to talk with your institution as well as the new institution to work on getting it transferred. But yes, it's possible, and it's quite frequent with this award.
Thinking about areas of science again, can I propose a clinical trial?
You can. The the budget might be a consideration, however, but we welcome clinical research in the funding opportunity. You know, you will have some special considerations if you have any questions about how to complete your application with those clinical requirements, please reach out to us and we can work with you on that as well. But yes, the clinical research is welcome.
What about global health investigators?
Yes, we allow foreign components, so you could conduct research in foreign sites, and we have supported global health type research before.
Oh, so if I'm going to do research on a non-US population, but I'm in the US at a US institution, that's okay? What if I'm at a foreign institution?
Yes, we allow the foreign components, so that's allowable. You would still have to abide by NIH policy about being outside your institution for certain amounts of time for the conduct of your research, but it is possible.
So if I'm at University of Toronto, I can still apply for this?
Oh, so you can't apply from a foreign-based institution.
Okay.
Only US-based domestic institutions are allowed. However, you can have those foreign components.
Okay. So I'm thinking we should move ahead to application and submission, that area. And I'm working my way through the Q&A box. So folks, you can keep adding to that, but if we've already answered it, I'm probably not going to answer it. I'm also typing in there. I don't know what people on the other side can see. So I'm typing some of the answers, or I'm stating that they're answered verbally. All right, so application and submission. How many applications do you guys receive every cycle?
Yes, so we can't tell you the number of applications that we receive, but I can tell you that our success rate is currently at 18%, so a decent success rate. However, remember that that may be a bit skewed because we do have that 2 application limit per institution.
Mm. Can you talk a little bit about collaborations and collaborators? Are they allowed? How do I talk about them? Can I put in their bio sketches? Is it okay if I just have my advisor and not a collaborator? I don't know. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, so collaborators are welcome on the application. You would discuss them in the research strategy essay. You're not allowed to list them as key personnel, and you are most definitely not allowed to put their bio sketch in the application anywhere. So don't try to hide it or sneak it in somewhere. Not allowed. We only want your bio sketch. So collaborators are great, and we do encourage you to also have them submit a letter of support as well, where they can talk about what aspect of the project they will be assisting you with, as well as affirm their commitment to you and the project. And collaborators can come with whatever your research needs are. They can be former mentors, but once again, you want to make sure that if you include mentors as collaborators, that you think from the eyes of a reviewer, and make sure that you explain in your application well how you are independent, how you will be separated and from your previous advisor, and how you have the skills and knowledge needed to conduct the meat of the project.
So the application requires that the applicant answer the question, quote, is the position contingent upon receipt of the Early Independence Award? So is one response, yes versus no, viewed more favorably by reviewers than the other? Susanna, that might be a question for you. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. We work very hard to make sure that our reviewers do not hold it against an applicant if it says that the position is contingent upon award. And we tell reviewers it can be for a variety of reasons. It might be your institution may have rules about how they announce positions. They have to open positions for a nationwide search, for example, and they're simply not allowed to promise a non-contingent position. So there's reasons why things may vary in terms of whether a position is promised as contingent or not, and we ask the reviewers not to consider that as a sign of more or less commitment from the institution, but really just to trust that if the institution is supporting this position, if awards if funds are awarded, that to trust that they will have everything needed to make sure the PI is successful.
Okay. Becky, is the research proposed expected to be a natural extension, or is it supposed to be distinct from the research program that the PI has conducted so far?
I guess there are a couple issues there. Like you need to propose research that was within your wheelhouse, your expertise, you have the skills and knowledge to conduct the research. However, you also want to be aware of potential competition or maybe some even conflict with your previous advisors. So if you are conducting research that you built on during your training period, you want to make sure that you can assure reviewers that you'll be able to take this as your own independent project, that your previous mentors are okay with this, that you've discussed it, that they're not pursuing the same topic. Just make sure that there's that clear delineation of how this will be independent and become yours. However, some people also will kind of pivot a little bit and pursue a different avenue of research. That's fine too, once again, as long as you have that expertise and the knowledge and skills to be able to conduct that research. So that's the important thing to consider.
Okay. Where in the application is the best place to address underrepresentation? And to what extent is this weighed or evaluated in the review process? Suzanne, can you take that?
Yeah, sure. It's allowable if you want to address underrepresentation in the biosketch section. However, we do not consider underrepresentation or any reviewer demographics in the review process. The reviewers are specifically instructed to evaluate the applications strictly on the 5 review criteria and cannot consider one's personal characteristics in demographic characteristics in scoring the applications. But at the same time, NIH is really committed to fostering diversity. It's very important. And so it may be considered in the award decision phase in terms of, we're looking to diversify types of institutions and types of people and types of areas of science that NIH can support.
Okay. Let's see. Is it necessary or required to propose having formal collaborators, or can you just have informal mentors?
Well, for collaborations, reviewers will want to see that you have those guarantees of help, rather than relying on just on mentors who may or not have be committed to your research project. So we would like to see demonstrated commitment from collaborators if they're going to serve in that role.
Okay.
We might need to move forward on.
Okay, we can, yeah, we got 5 minutes. So what's the next budget?
I don't
Can
know.
you,
Yeah. Okay.
I don't see a lot of questions in the chat about this, but can award money be used for salary support for collaborators, students, other staff, key
Yes.
personnel? Can those students or staff be key personnel as well?
Yes, you can use the budget for key personnel, but you can't list key personnel.
Okay, so you don't write about them, but you, okay. If my host institution is providing startup funds, how do I address this in my budget justification?
So we are asking for a modular budget, so you don't really provide many specifics beyond just personnel justification, which is also brief.
Okay. How do I allocate startup funds versus DP5 funds? For example, if I have a large cost equipment item, should I put those on the DP5 or the startup? Should my salary go to the DP5 or the startup?
Yeah, so once again, we don't require budget details, so that will be between you and your institution. We just ask for kind of the bare bones on personnel. We do get a lot of questions about salary in the DP5. People asking, how much should I request of my salary off the DP5 and all that. That will once again be up to you and your institution to decide. We don't have any specifications about what we require from that, except that you must adhere to the NIH salary caps.
This is an odd question to me. They're talking about kind of budget, but not really. What if after submission of the application, a different application, I don't think they mean application, a different institution offers a more competitive environment or startup offer? So, or what if a mentor moves? Can the DP5 be transferred? Yes, we know the DP5 can be transferred, but yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't understand their question. I think the answer is just yes, the DP5 can be transferred. Do you want to move ahead to letters of reference and letters of support?
Yeah.
What's the difference between a letter of reference and a letter of support?
Yeah, so your letter of reference is typically going to come from other scientists or people who can evaluate the merits of your project and your qualifications to fulfill those needs. So these ideally should come from people who aren't in conflict with your proposal, so people who won't benefit from you receiving the award. But these letters should be people who can really affirm your skills and your readiness for independence. Letters of support are people who are going to participate on the project, who are going to play some key role or offer help by providing services or equipment, time, anything like that. The letters of support are their affirmation that they are committed to providing that assistance.
Okay. So should they speak primarily to the research, or should it speak to mentorship, administrative experience, and what's best?
Yeah. Suzanne, do you want to take that?
All of it's helpful. Anything that they can say about you and your qualifications for being independent. And part of being independent is being able to mentor graduate students or postdocs in the lab, being able to administer your own lab. So if you have examples, if they have examples of folks that you've mentored, either undergraduate students, fellow graduate students, that's helpful to know. If you've had experience helping to set up a lab, that sort of administrative experience, all of it's helpful to know for the reviewers. So as complete a picture as they can paint for your readiness for independence is helpful.
Can the same person provide both a letter of support and a letter of reference? Is that a good idea?
No, they need to be separate because, as Becky said, you don't want the person writing your letter of reference to have a conflict of interest, have something to gain from your project. They need to be independent.
Is there a limit to the number of letters of support or letters of reference that I should include?
It's 3 to 5 letters of reference, and there's not a limit for letters of support. I would caution against having too many, just in terms, one purely logistical reason is the more you put in, if they're at lots of different institutions, you're creating conflicts for the reviewers. You knock out your reviewer pool because reviewers cannot come from any of the institutions listed as participating in your project.
Oh, that's an important thing that many people don't think about. That's a good point. So really quickly, the review section, can applicants, Suzanne, this is your wheelhouse, are applicants allowed to provide updates after the proposal is submitted? I just published a paper, whatever, you know, can they let you know that and the reviewers get to see it?
Yes, you will have an opportunity to provide any updates in terms of new publications and that sort of thing. Anything that's allowable under the post-submission materials policy of NIH, which I would send to you. I would provide you information about the review process, what types of information you can provide, and when. It has to be submitted 30 days before the March meeting.
How many papers do I need to be competitive?
There is no specified number of papers that one needs to be competitive. You just need to be able to demonstrate that you have been productive. It could be the small number of papers that have been highly influential publications that can be viewed just as well as a large number of applications. And you know, if you just have a large number of applications, none of which are in what are considered top journals that or publications that have been broadly cited and demonstrated to have an impact in the field, it doesn't matter how many you have if they're not considered ones that have made an impact.
So what are the review criteria that's most important to the reviewers? What are they focused on the most?
So all 5 of the review criteria are considered in the final score, but the funding opportunity does specify that reviewers should give greater weight to the investigator and the environment criteria. And yeah, so it's really important to paint a picture of yourself and your readiness and to have the institution provide the details about the support they'll give you.
Okay. Is it okay to contact a previous reviewer so they can review my grant application before I submit it? I know those review panels are public, so.
No, never, ever, ever can you contact a previous reviewer to ask questions about their review of your application. You should have colleagues review your application before submitting, but do not reach out to prior reviewers.
Okay. I want to switch over to some of the, how long do we have, Becky? I don't want to ignore some of these questions in the box.
We're over time, but I guess if Suzanne, if you guys have time, we can try to get through some more of these questions.
I can stay on and
I can as well.
Okay, so can you elaborate, Becky, on the comment that the budget does not need to pay for the 9.6 months of salary or paid effort?
That it doesn't need to. So salary support can come in all sorts of different ways. From sometimes the institution will pitch in. So we don't specify exactly how much institution is required to support your salary or how much the DP5 should support it. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I'm not. Yeah,
well, I think what it is they want to know how much of their salary they need to put on the grant versus, but that's not the important thing. The important thing is you need to have that set aside time for research. So yeah. For those letter of reference writers, is it okay to be the same if it's the same person that provided a reference for prior submissions, like for an F31 or an F32?
I mean, if they meet those kind of the needs for being able to talk about your expertise and your experiences, then they're fine to be referees for the DP5 as well.
Back to that percent effort question. Does the percent effort in the budget need to exactly match the percent effort dedicated specifically to the DP2 project?
Once again, no, we don't specify. Some institutions will provide full salary support for the researcher, and so then zero goes on to the DP5, but that's a discussion between you and the institution.
How many applications are funded every year?
We aim to support at least 12 applications each year.
Okay, 12. Does the postdoc limit apply only to the postdoc job title? Does time spent in another job title, like research scientist assistant, count toward that limit?
Oh, so Suzanne may chime in here too, but it sounds like the research science, if it's like a independent research position that you took on for a while that wasn't actual training, then we wouldn't consider that a postdoc.
Right.
But I don't know. the
Kind of sounds
CSR
independent. I think we would need more information about that, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. Is previous mentoring experience, like mentoring high school students, undergrads, grad students, part of the consideration for evaluating independence of the applicant?
Yeah, Suzanne?
So it's not explicitly required that you have previous mentoring experience, but it is something that if it's listed in the application that the reviewers will consider, and consider how that reflects upon your ability to be independent at this stage of career.
Okay, this award is available every year. Can you clarify how long? Oh boy. Can you clarify how long after gaining a doctoral degree is the person still eligible for applying to the award? I think we've answered that. It's in that window. Oh, here's a good one too. Will a potentially high reward and high impactful, but not very high risk project be suitable for this award?
Yes, I think so, because once again, we're looking at multiple factors. Like we're looking at your readiness for independence and your qualifications and skills. We're looking at the institutional commitment and support, and then we're also looking at the proposal. So we want research that is significant and innovative and well thought out, but it doesn't necessarily need to be in the same category as some of the other high risk, high reward research program initiatives. We recognize you need to be able to build your program off of this, and may not want to be so risky that you may not have anything to build off of later.
So a little bit less high risk is tolerated here. Can you simultaneously apply for this award program and another NIH postdoctoral fellowship such as an F32?
Yeah, Suzanne?
Yes, you can apply for both, but you would have, if you were lucky enough to have both awarded, you can only pick one.
And they can't be the same project, right?
Correct.
Yeah, there can't be any scientific overlap.
That's really important. Okay. Yeah, we answered that. I'm feeling pretty good about that we've answered a lot of this stuff. One person asked, what's the transition look like between a DP5 and an R01?
Yeah, so we've actually looked at this quite carefully. The good news is that people who receive the DP5 receive follow-on funding, like an R01, at the same rate and about the same timing as those who are ESI who received their first R01. So we're not seeing any lag for DP5s and follow-on funding. So it's comparable.
Good. So people asked if there are example applications online that we can refer to while developing our own application.
Yes, if you go to our website, to our application guide, there are example applications there. Just remember that those were written a while ago from previous funding opportunities, so the format may not be the exact same as are required now.
Okay, good. Talking about LOIs, letters of intent, their university mentioned that they could submit one, but they said that most applicants they work with don't bother. What's the benefit? Maybe Suzanne can take this. For me, my institution or NIH that an LOI provides.
Well, one of the benefits is to allow us to project workload, right? If we know from letters of intent how many applications to expect, then that helps us to manage our workload, manage the timing so that we can make sure that the review happens in an appropriately timely manner. It also helps us know the spectrum of institutions that are applying, and maybe that helps us decide which reviewers to recruit so that we're not, having a lot of conflicts of interest institutionally wise between reviewers and applicants, but largely it helps with workload.
Okay. What's the main difference between a K99 R01, maybe they mean K99 R00, versus a DP5? Is there advantage to going for one versus the other?
Well, I think you need to consider your readiness for independence. So, the K awards, those are career awards. They're really meant to help you get an easier way into your career. Whereas the DP5, we're asking you to take the jump immediately and starting your own independent research program. And it's also important to note that the DP5, we talk about institutional support and readiness and all that, but at the end of the day, it is a research project grant, and you will be evaluated. If you receive the award, you'll be evaluated based on your progress in the research. The career awards, I having not administered those myself, but those typically start off with some sort of mentoring or training component, and then with the R00 portion, you would go on into an independent role. So it's more of a ease into that transition. So I think those are some of the differences.
Okay. I feel like we've answered all of these. I haven't typed every single answer in the chat box to our Q&A box to you all, but I feel like we've covered all these. I don't know if Becky, if you're looking at them at the same time, or there are some new ones that came in. How about submitting an R01 application at the same time? Is this possible?
Yes, you can, but once again, they can't have any scientific overlap.
Right, but they would need to have an independent position to submit an R01.
That's true. Like if an institution is willing to submit your R01 application, you can do so. But just note, we do not allow scientific overlap.
Yeah. Okay. People again are asking if they can move the award, and that's true, but the institution is not usually changed pre-award, right? It would be post-award. Is that true?
Well, it's more common for you to get the award and then later on you would transfer it. However, if you submit your application and then transfer or change institutions before awards are made, you can contact us and then we can talk.
Yeah, and it's important to note that the original institution has to release it, so you have to do that. Okay, if a previous research experience was simply a research assistant, analyst, or coordinator, like a non-academic and non-investigator, would that count as postdoc research experience? So I'm wondering if they're talking about maybe a biotech position.
No, that is not considered a postdoctoral experience.
Okay. Well, I'm kind of feeling like we've gone through all these. So if you want to wrap up, Becky, I leave that to you to decide.
All right. Yes. Yeah, I think we got most of them, the questions. However, if you still have questions that you would like answered, please contact us at earlyindependence@od.nih.gov, and we can answer your questions there. As a reminder, the webinar recording and the slides will be posted on our website at commonfund.nih.gov/earlyindependence. So give us a week or two to get those up there. But we want to thank you for attending and for your great questions.
Okay, bye.
All right.